Good morning. This is Senate Judiciary, February 24th, 2022, and we're approaching the crossover deadline. And I'm sorry we were a little bit late. We were trying to get Senator Benning in the room, who had another meeting at 8 o'clock. So legislators are in high demand right now. Our first order of business is court reopening, and the major problem appears to be that we're discussing this morning is courthouse security. And we had a meeting earlier this month with Justice Eaton, Judge Zone, folks from the sheriffs and the state's attorneys and sheriff's department, and several sheriffs. This would be making recommendations to the Senate Appropriations Committee and perhaps Senate Finance. There is one outstanding issue. The sheriffs have not had an increase in some of their fees for dozens of years, and it could help them with recruitment and other things. So I would hope we can raise that. But Eric, if you could start off with Stephanie. I believe that the 23 budget provides a small increase for courthouse security. And Justice Eaton, maybe you could help us with the numbers, if you wouldn't mind, versus what you need to do the job. Or maybe Stephanie has those numbers.
Yeah, Senator, I know that Judge Zone and Scott Griffith are on the call, and they have been fine-tuning that. So I'm going to let them speak to that, if you don't mind.
Okay, let's start with what the sheriffs. First, we'll hear from Judge Zone on what the sheriffs believe they need in an hourly rate.
My understanding is that, first, Tom Zone, Chief Superior Judge, good morning.
Good morning.
There's been talk between the numbers we've had in the past, and there's been talk of $45 an hour, $50 an hour. And I'm sure John Campbell would have a better idea of this, but my understanding is basically what we're being told by the sheriffs is they're going to need $50 an hour for the break even. And okay. So if we look at what we've submitted previously, we understood that that number may have been $45. Now we're hearing the number may be 50. So when you look at the numbers from where we are, previously we've indicated that we were looking for an extra 1.5 above what the budget was to be able to fund next year. That number actually was at $45 an hour. If we have to go to $50 an hour, we're looking at a number that is significantly higher in order to be able to keep the operations going. And so we're looking at a number that's going to be up more in the range of $2 million, as I understand it.
Over the governor's recommend.
Yes.
Thank you. And Eric, we had some language that would allow the state paid deputies who generally do transport, but transports are down dramatically, to provide courthouse security. And since they're already being paid by the state, you have some language on that?
Yes, exactly. The concept is how you just described it, Senator Sears. And by the way, Eric Fitzpatrick with the Office of Legislative Counsel here to talk a little bit about a possible additional amendment to the Budget Adjustment Act. Well,
it wouldn't be budget adjustment. That's already.
Oh, right. Sorry. To the big bill, right? To the budget. Conceptually, it's that the way the language is structured currently, the committee, the executive committee of the Sheriff's Association and the Department of State's Attorneys and Sheriffs jointly have authority for the assignment of positions for the deputy sheriffs who are paid by the state. But the proposal is, and we can pull up the language if that's easier, Senator Sears, but the proposal.
Yeah, probably easier to pull up the language so the committee members can see it.
Yeah, sounds good. Let me do that. Yeah, you'll see that the language proposes more flexibility with the Department of State's attorneys and sheriffs to assign these deputies, sheriff's deputies who are state paid, to take on various other duties. So that could include, as you mentioned, court security or other things that the Department of State's attorneys and sheriffs determine would be helpful and appropriate. So here's the language here. As you would expect, it's an amendment to the general language regarding county sheriff's departments. And you'll see subsection B is the existing provision. And this refers to specifically deputies whose primary responsibility is transportation of prisoners who are state paid. So they are paid by the state as opposed to by the county. I'm just going to skip ahead just so you can see the current statute that's proposed to be struck, and that's lines 1 through 7 on page 2. So as I was mentioning, the way it is right now, as appointment of deputies and their salary approved by the governor, line 3, joint decision of the executive committee of the Sheriff's Association and Department of Sheriffs and State's Attorneys over assignment of position locations, that's line 5, in the counties of state paid deputy sheriffs, and shall review the county location assignments periodically for efficient use of resources. So the proposal is to move from that joint structure to a more unified structure where the Department of State's attorneys and sheriffs makes those decisions. So you see lines proposal for new language starting on line 15. Positions in their funding will be assigned to the Department of State's attorneys and sheriffs. So that's where this is going to will be funneled through. Executive director shall have the authority to determine job duties for the position, assignment of positions to county, regular and temporary work locations, assistance to other state agencies and departments, i.e. including the court, timesheet systems, daily work logs, have final approval of personnel matters, including but not limited to approval for hiring, pay grade assignment, hiring rate, discipline, and termination. So these final decisions are all unified within the Department of State's attorneys and sheriffs, as opposed to this previous sort of joint operation. However, you'll see the proposal is to that the executive committee of the sheriffs is included, and there's a new, and I think that it's not new, it already exists, but there's more specificity as to how that executive committee is structured and established, but there's some language on that. It's going to have 5 current sheriffs, how they're elected, that sort of thing. But the main thing is you see lines 11 through 15, executive committee shall meet at least quarterly to provide input to the Department of State's attorneys and sheriffs regarding budget, legislation, personnel policies, assignment of positions, et cetera. So rather than it being a joint decision, the executive department, the executive committee of the sheriffs, they have an advisory role. They meet, the state's attorneys have to consider their recommendations, but the final decision, as I mentioned earlier, about how these positions are assigned is for the Department of State's attorneys and sheriffs, and it includes flexibility for other state agencies and departments, other work that may be needed.
May I ask a question about that, Senator Sears?
Go ahead, Senator White. I might have frozen.
Oh, okay. So I'm curious as to why we would have put this all in the hands of the executive director and trusting the current executive director. But most often the executive directors come from state's attorneys positions and not sheriff's positions at all. And so the executive director may or may not have any relationship to the knowledge of the actual needs of the sheriff's offices. So I'm curious as to why we did this.
Well, because we're trying to solve a problem here. We have 25 state paid deputies, many of whom are not doing transports. And we have a huge problem with courthouse security that has hampered the opening of many courts in the state and has shortened the hours that those courts are open. And I was trying to find a way to, if you know that, I think the executive committee is the one that would be making or the committee of the sheriffs is making the decisions jointly with the executive director.
No, we've
But
changed
let
that.
me,
Okay.
well, we have a crisis, and if you want to sunset the bill after the crisis is over, that's fine. But we have these 25 state paid deputies. Basically, we don't know, the auditor of accounts looked at the positions, and while the state was paying deputies to do transports during the pandemic, and the transports weren't happening, and that was up to the local sheriffs of how they were assigned. And you had, according to the auditor of accounts, Chittenden County sent their sheriffs home, and Bennington County, I think, did the same. So you have this unique situation where during the pandemic they weren't working. There were few transports to make, and other situations. And I don't care if you want to sunset it, but I'm really concerned about spending $2 million more than the governor recommended on courthouse security when you have 25 positions that are not all that active and they're state paid. So I was hoping that we'd find a way to move them into courthouse security when they weren't doing transports.
Yes, that was not my question. I realize we have, well, I'll wait till Eric is done walking through this, and then I'm going to just have some
Well, I think
observations.
probably John Campbell or Annie Noonan might answer that, but this was my idea of getting it moving and talking with Eric and having it drafted. That's all.
So, I mean, I have some other concerns about how if you have somebody assigned to the courthouse for security because there are no transports and suddenly there's a transport that day, what do? Do you pull them out of the courthouse or do you not do the transport? And I think that there are additional questions. And I also have a question for Judge Zone, but I'll wait.
All right.
The walkthrough is all set, though. I mean, that's the end of the language. So I don't have
Okay.
anything more to add. But
Well,
thank you, though.
maybe John Campbell or Annie Noonan can answer your question, Senator White.
Should I pull the screen down, Senator Sears?
Yeah, please.
Yep.
John,
that should
do
do
you
it.
or Annie want to?
Yeah.
Andy, go ahead.
Good morning. Good morning, senators and Justice Eaton and Judge Zone. Thank you, everybody. Senator White, if I can, on a bunch of the questions you've asked. So you talked about the fact that there's no relationship to the needs of the sheriff's office with regard to the department. Because maybe I misquoted. But the relationship we have, our department pays the sheriff's salaries. We pay the 25 state transport deputies. Because of this unique situation with this joint public-private ventureship, it's incumbent upon the department to understand the total operations of the sheriffs. Part of that is because we also support through our budget the use of per diems. Now, they are not state employees, so there is this integration. We need to understand, what the sheriffs are doing, what contracts they have. There is a tremendous relationship with interrelationship between those two issues. So I do think it is occurring, and it is necessary for this department to fully understand the operation, the public-private ventureship is critical to understand so that we can do our job, the sheriffs can do their job. I think the problem with this joint oversight of who gets to decide what the state transport deputies is doing is it's been looked at repeatedly, and I think that there have been a lot of points, a lot of folks that have pointed out that this has caused some problems. Senator Sears mentioned the whole issue of what happened during the pandemic. You know, you had sheriffs from you had the sheriff in Lamoille County handling the motel program in Chittenden County, where when the Chittenden County had 6 sheriffs who could have been doing that, and that was on a contract. And I think that was, you know, additional state money that probably didn't need to get paid because we were already paying 6 people to do that work, who didn't do it. The auditor has pointed out the problems with timesheets, with work logs, in terms of hiring and separation from positions or pay grade assignments. You know, we really try very hard to make sure that we're working. I work with the sheriffs on all of those issues. I just did a reclass for the deputy sheriffs and got them upgraded. When a sheriff wants to hire somebody, we take a look at this. We try to take a look at the staffing and the resources as best we can. So I think that the issue comes down to, you know, they're state employees. This is the only place I know where a state department doesn't have really the final say on how a state employee is utilized. Even when positions are granted, you know, grant funded by federal or other grants, the employing agency has sort of the final say. And I think that the language that Eric put up on the screen would clarify the structure of the sheriff's executive committee, the election periods, all of that. I think it just gives a lot more direction and constructive I guess I get to say a construct to how this program works, because it's problematic in many ways. And I think we've worked hard with, and many of the sheriffs are doing good work right now. It's just really hard for us to be able to direct them to help, whether it's DCF, the kid that's sitting in a lockup up in St. Albans, or the court security issue, or anything with DMH or corrections. If corrections is in a jam, you know, it's really difficult right now for us to be able to say, gee, they really need some help, and you've got people who are available. If a state transport deputy is doing court security and a transport comes in, the sheriffs can either use a per diem, which we can pay for and work with the courts if we need to do an interdepartmental transfer, or another sheriff's department can go up and assist with that transport. They're supposed to be coordinating regularly. All of them 12 of them have state transport deputies, and they're supposed to coordinate. That can happen right now if somebody's out of state doing an extradition. Yeah. They've got the transport deputies down in South Carolina picking somebody up, and a transport comes in. They use a per diem, or they rely on another sheriff.
Thank you. That's very helpful. And I do understand that part is really helpful about how they use the per diem when they're, so I feel much better about that. And I do understand that and we'll just see how this goes, because I do know that right now, I know that the department works very closely with the sheriffs. I know that in the past it has not, that under some executive directors that it has not worked closely with the sheriffs, and they did not have the same kind of relationship. So I appreciate that, and we'll just see how it goes. But thank you.
I want to mention that we just talked about over $2 million over the current budget. And there are a lot of pressures on the base budget. Or I should say over the governor's, 2 million over the governor's recommend. Right. If we can cut into that by using state paid deputies who are already being paid by the state, who may be not doing transports, who could do courthouse security, we can cut into that $2 million. That's Judge Zone.
Senator, I think it's appropriate. I think I misspoke. The $2 million is above what we had asked for in our budget. We previous for
Oh,
the $50 an hour. So the difference over the governor's recommend is $1.25 million, I believe. And I apologize for that confusion. So the governor was short. We were asking for 1.5 million in addition over our budget for security for next year. The governor put into his budget 750,000. If we go to $50 an hour, our 1.5 million ask actually is a $2 million ask, which puts us $1.25 million over what the governor has recommended.
Stephanie, do you have that?
Yes, that was going to be one of my questions. There, you see the 750 in their budget documents.
Okay, so thank you, Judge, for
The
clearing
net is
that
the
up.
1.25.
Yeah, but if we can cut into that by using the state paid deputies, then we can if we could even get back to what the court asked for and pay the sheriffs what they feel they need. Senator White.
May I ask Judge Zone? Oh, there he is. He didn't go away. A question. So
Yes.
I know that one of the reasons the sheriffs need that is because they actually subsidize what is paid by the state by providing uniforms and cars and equipment and guns and vests and all that kind of stuff. So I am just curious how much you pay Securitas.
I can get that information from Greg Mosley.
Okay, thank you.
The hope would be to have at least one sheriff in each courthouse. Is that correct?
Yes, at least one full certified level 1 officer in each court.
Yeah, when I say sheriff, I should say sheriff's deputy, not necessarily the sheriff, him or herself.
Having a fully certified law enforcement officer in each building is what our goal is. And then we can supplement that with other, whether it's private court officers or lower certified officers, level 1, things like that. But yes, we want one fully certified officer in each building.
Okay. All right. Joe, you frequent courthouses more than we do. And you've been holding hearings on reopening.
I would add to the conversation by saying 2 days ago, I got a call from former Representative Ben Joseph, and I wanted to ask Judge Zone if he'd heard from him yet, because I steered him in your direction. He's very upset about the status of the courthouse in Grand Isle. Was not aware that the Supreme Court had taken its own deputies and moved them up there to try to keep the building open sometime. But I continue to watch the hospitalization rates and the ICU rates, and they're plummeting dramatically. I do understand that now it's not HVAC, it's shifted to this conversation about sheriffs and the need to have security. So frankly, I'm hoping that appropriations will take this seriously. I think it's a good move to grab that and try to provide through the budget these sheriffs. I'm somewhat scratching my head on Jeanette's concern about the Department of Sheriffs and state's attorneys, but I don't want to get that conversation sidetracking us from getting people into the building. So whatever method it has to take place through, we've really got to get this system moving. And I continue to have cases assigned to me that I just cannot get through the system for some reason. And it's frankly quite frustrating. That's my rant for the morning, I guess.
Yeah. I think we're all trying to accomplish the same goal. It's just how do we get there? I do have one question for Eric and Annie. The dates on that look like 2023. Would this be able to be as soon as the budget passes? Could we move in this direction?
In fact, actually, Senator John Campbell, if I could just, I was I noticed that date also. I would think that if you were going to do this, you'd probably want to make it upon passage so that
Yeah.
we could get this thing moving.
Yeah,
Annie,
you
no-
could certainly draft it that way. Yeah, definitely. Could you just take the dates out and just make the section effective on passage of the big bill? Or you could make
Could
it, if you, July 1st, 2022, if you preferred that, if you wanted to, if you weren't sure when the budget was going to get signed.
Yeah, passage is probably better because usually it gets signed before July 1.
Right.
So Judge Zone,
Senator, I have said the answer to Senator White's question. I'm advised that Securitas is paid $31.24 an hour under the existing contract.
And may I ask a follow-up to that?
yeah, he
Are-
may not have the answer.
Are they level one?
No,
No, they're not. So we're paying 31 an hour for non-level one, and we still have to have a level one.
Well, they're security. They're no,
Right, but they have to call, like, if something happens in Brattleboro, they have to call the Brattleboro Police Department. So, and the Brattleboro Police Department isn't subsidized in any way for taking care of that
right.
arrest.
The,
So,
the goal of this effort is to have at least one law enforcement level you know the levels better than I, but one law enforcement officer with all the powers of a law enforcement officer in each courthouse in the state.
right. No, I was just trying to make a point that we are paying $30 an hour for non-certified, where someone has to call another certified officer to come and cover for them because they can't arrest the person, where we are having issue with $50 an hour for certified.
But
That's all.
unlike other areas of state government, the sheriffs are a business and they have to keep, I'm quoting Justice Eaton.
I know.
And they're a business. And so they have chosen in some cases not to provide security, or like in Bennington County, to provide less hours of security, and which has, I think the courthouse is down a couple of hours a day of what it might otherwise be in the Superior Courthouse and the Probate Courthouse. So those are negotiations, and I was hopeful at some point we'd get to have one negotiation with, instead of 12 different negotiations on courthouse security.
If I can just say, I'm not trying to be an obstructionist here. I think we need to solve this problem, and I think that this is a reasonable solution for right now. But the point I was trying to make is that Securitas is a private agency. We can negotiate with them and pay them $30 an hour for people who are not certified at all. And so because they're not certified, some other certified officer has to come and solve the problem when problem comes up. So all I'm trying to say is that we need to understand that I don't think it's asking a lot to pay $30 an hour for, or $50 an hour for certified. That's all I'm trying to say.
I appreciate that, Senator. And all I'm trying to say, and I think Senator Nick has the same struggle, is as we try to keep the base budgets as reasonable as possible, so, if we can not have to do what I know, I'm lost on the numbers, but Stephanie will know what they are. If we don't have to increase by as much as required, because we already have 25 state paid deputies who were designed for transport, and transport has changed, and the numbers we got last week are startling to the number of transports they're doing. I think it was 54 in Chittenden County with 6 transport deputies. I'm sure they could spare 4 of them.
Yep, I agree.
For security.
May I ask Annie a question?
Sure.
How much do we pay for per diems?
So the per diem rate in the statute is something like $22 an hour, $24 an hour. And then there is a provision that the sheriff can charge additional costs for things like worker comp or whatever. I actually think that rate probably hasn't been looked at in a number of years. And I think that rate should go up also. It's embedded in the statute. I would like to suggest that as you're looking at, Senator Sears mentioned looking at different rates that need to be adjusted, that be one of them. And to allow us to support the sheriff's use of those per diems a little bit more properly.
Well, Annie, I've been working with Sheriff Anderson on the fees. If you have other suggestions for that, but I'm happy to look at them.
Great.
But
send that-
I know
I'll
that
send
the
that in.
fees we were specific, Sheriff Anderson and I were looking specifically at the fees for service,
For civil service, yep,
for civil
process.
service, and the
Mhm.
fees for fingerprinting, which haven't been increased in,
Right, for
I
years.
think he said 15 years, but I'm
Mhm.
not, don't hold me to that number.
And to Senator White, to your point, which about, the Securitas getting it, I do want to say to the committee that in having the service of a state transport deputy potentially available as we can work that out with the court and the sheriffs, we can, sit down and talk about all, you do get fully certified. Every sheriff deputy, state transport deputy, except one, is level 3 certified, highest level certification. One is level 2. So you do get a level of professionalism, with people who have been through the academy. And so I think your point is well taken.
Okay.
And we have many right now. I don't have the full list, but we have the Addison County State Transport Deputy who's working in the court in Franklin County. Is doing it in Rutland and Orleans, Lamoille, Caledonia, Chittenden, and Windsor. We've been really asking them to help the courts. Right now, what we need to do is get this all lined up and in agreement so that the court contract, whatever Judge Zone and Justice Eaton put together with the sheriffs, and then this department with the sheriffs, and so that everything's coordinated and we all know how we can use people and what the the backstop is. If somebody's out on a transport, what's the next step? So I think that this could work. It's just a matter of supporting the language that allows us to work with each of the sheriffs and get them involved.
Okay. Other questions for anyone? So, Stephanie,
Yes.
you work magic on the budget issues. Can you make heads or tails of this and what we might need?
I think it will depend on where you land, and as Annie was saying, how much can be coordinated in FY23 to make a difference to the need that the judiciary is seeing right now. I think in aligning the use of the transport deputies, how much pressure do you take off that extra need that the judiciary is identifying? And that's not quite clear yet, because it does sound like some of it's happening in some places a little bit already. And so I don't have a clear picture of how much that would impact yet. I think it takes a little bit more work on the side of what's happening with Annie looking at the system to understand what that might end up being.
Yeah, it's hard to gauge how many of the 25. There are 3 openings of the 25?
Yes,
Okay.
Senator, that's correct. There's 3 openings right now.
Okay. Well, that's actually, in terms of vacancy, that's better than the rate of local police departments and state police, frankly. I did meet with one of the Chittenden County Sheriff's deputies during the spring, and you know he seemed, I shouldn't say they, he seemed comfortable with the idea of having one central unit that would assign the deputies rather than the current system. He was concerned that they really didn't have, they were being called out in various places, but it didn't seem to be any uniformity. So I don't think there's necessarily an objection. I haven't heard one from the state paid deputies. And it's the individual sheriff, though, that decides how the state paid deputy is going to be used currently. Is that correct? So
That
in
is-
Bennington, if the sheriff wanted to assign 2 state paid deputies to the courthouse, he could. Is that correct?
As long as the transport work, which is their first obligation, gets done. After that, if the sheriff wanted to move people over to help with the courthouse security, we have said that that's okay with the department. Part of the issue has been making sure that I'm advising the sheriffs properly so that Auditor Hoffer doesn't see a problem with any double dipping, and that's been a challenge because the courts definitely need additional help. But so we have it very, very clear that if you have a state transport person doing that work, don't be billing the court. So in essence, we're in underwriting right now the work that needs to get done for the judiciary, and we're doing that because it makes sense, because it's all state government and people should be working cooperatively.
So for Stephanie's purposes, can you help her with how that might work so that, let's say there are 12 of the 25, let's say they're all the positions are filled, and half of them are doing courthouse work. That doesn't get billed to the court. That just is, they're being paid through the state payment system. And so that would, it would help her if we could estimate the number that might be utilized for state. I think that would help you, Stephanie, to figure it out if we knew the number that might be assigned to courthouse security.
I think in the overall analysis that Andy is contemplating in terms of this work alignment is that also that per diem piece on through the sheriff's budget
Right.
that has to be included there.
Correct.
So it's not just it's not just the pressure down in judiciary, but also that potential cost up on the per diem piece for the transports, because that'll play into aligning all this work.
Senator Nitker, you wanted to read a, Jesus.
Yes, just in terms of,
I just got a text from Vince Luzzi. That's why I'm shaking my head.
this has to do with, how busy the courts are with regard to, well, different judges assigned to different things, but this is an excerpt, and this is in the public record, so I'm not reading anything confidential, from Judge Mello in putting something together for us for judicial retention. He was talking about the work he's doing in terms of, well, here, this started in November 5th, and then over the next 6 weeks, I issued a series of individual decisions in each case. These were cases, the defendants claimed their constitutional rights to a speedy trial had been violated by delays allegedly caused by the judiciary's response in the COVID-19 pandemic. So anyway, of those cases, he granted the motions in 24 cases and denied the motions in 11 cases. 3 appeals were filed, but they were all withdrawn, so my decisions in those 35 cases are now final. Then he speaks of, I'm also presently dealing with a flood of cases filed under a law passed last year by the legislature, entitling inmates to appeal to Superior Court when their furlough has been revoked or interrupted, quote marks, for 90 days or more. Although these cases arise from all over the state, nearly all the appeals are being filed in Washington County because this is where the Prisoner's Rights Office is located. As a result, my small staff and I are buried with these appeals. More than 90 of them have been filed in my court so far. Because each inmate is claiming a right to be immediately released from jail, cases obviously need to be decided promptly. Therefore, we need to give them priority on the docket, putting them ahead of all the other civil cases we have to deal with in Washington County. I have already issued decisions in 45 of these inmate cases since I got here in September, but my clerk tells me we have another 48 still pending, and the number keeps growing as more appeals keep getting filed. So he's not complaining about this. He's just telling us what's going on there. So just for our own information as to
All right.
the impact of what's going on.
Yeah, I think it's at a stage where I'm sure it's much more than courthouse security, but courthouse security is what we're looking at now. And I know there's other things going on in the judiciary, and Justice Eaton, there may be some courthouses that have HVAC problems. There may be courthouses that have other issues that are not allowing us to get back to full force, and the pandemic is still on, and et cetera. What struck me yesterday, I was reading the Boston Globe, and they had a headline that only 133 people in Massachusetts died yesterday of COVID. Well, that's great news for everyone but the 133, I suppose. And so, we act like it's gone away in some cases here. It hasn't, and it's still holding things up. But we recognize that one of the things that's hindering our reopening is courthouse security.
Right. And I didn't read that with regard to courthouse security. I read that just as what's.
No, I know. There's a variety of reasons, but what we can try to solve today anyway, or
Right.
try to make better for next year would be that.
At the same time, I did receive a complaint about the Windsor County Courthouse in Woodstock not being open because of a lack of a sheriff being available, not HVAC or anything like that. So that's just an aside.
Yeah, I mean, I've been fielding complaints from some citizens regarding the hours of the civil and probate courts in Bennington County, which have been shortened due to the agreement that was reached between the Bennington County Sheriff and the Judiciary on opening that building. Is Steve Howard in the room, or does he want to get in, Peggy? The BSEA guy.
Senator Sears?
Yeah.
I'm going to just go off camera for 1 minute. I'm going to go turn up the heat up here. It's 7 degrees here and my room is about 8 degrees. So I'm going to go turn up the heat.
And knowing how much you love cold air.
I know. It's even too cold for me.
Okay. If he does, would you let him in, Senator Peggy? Is there anyone else who would like to comment on any of this at this point?
There just with regard to Steve Howard, I do see there is an email from him that I just came and just sort of popped up here. But so I don't know if Peggy wants to. He said he would like to testify on this amendment. We want to make sure it is explicit that they are classified state employees with all the same collective bargaining rights as all other law enforcement officers employed by the state.
Well, I need Senator. I can't. Maybe my mail is going into junk because I don't have that one either.
Yeah, well, I wouldn't have seen that either, except that I was off of mute.
Yeah, I assume that's the case, but Senator White would know more about that than I would.
Yeah. Peggy might be.
I think that's the 6 Chittenden County sheriffs are part of the bargaining unit.
Yes.
One are represented by the VSEA.
Yes.
I know there's a bill in Senator White's committee to recognize, to make all of them. Yes, Annie.
Yes, Senator. The 6 Chittenden County State's attorneys were organized under the Municipal Employee Labor Relations Act, not the State Employees Labor Relations Act. And you are correct. There's a bill pending in both the House and the Senate for to put the state transport deputies as classified state employees under Title III. So that I don't know the bill number, but there.
I think it's S-170, I think.
So the bill, the bills that are in front of you, though from VSEA would dissolve the unit that was created by the Chittenden County under the Municipal Employee Labor Relations Act, and then move everyone under the state, under Title III State Employee Labor Relations Act. So just to answer your question, Senator, you are correct that there are 2 bills pending right now.
Okay. That's certainly. Eric, did you have a comment on that?
Well, I just had a follow-up question for that, for maybe Annie and Senator White, just to make sure, does that mean that you wouldn't need any language with respect to classified employees in this particular amendment? In other words, that's being addressed elsewhere. So like I had originally occurred to me, if you looked at the language here, when the under subsection B, it says full-time state deputy sheriffs whose primary responsibility is et cetera, shall be paid by the state of Vermont. You could insert shall be classified employees paid by the state of Vermont, but maybe I don't need to do that because it sounds like that's being addressed elsewhere. Just want to make sure.
The provision under Title 24, I think it's 290A, there may be some conflict there, Eric. Because some of the authority for oversight falls under the provisions under Title 24. So the language that you put up on the screen actually clarifies more specifically that the direction and control for the 25 positions would be under the state department in consultation and with the sheriffs. So I think I would say to you just that intersect between Title 24 and Title 3, and the language probably needs to have a review, but I don't think your language in any way interferes with the proposal that has been brought forward under those 2 bills.
Okay.
But that's just
Great.
my best quick review.
Thank you.
Peggy, would you send a link to Steve Howard, please?
I already did.
Oh, thank you. Aluzi's traveling to Baltimore and he's writing me to Florida, and he's in Baltimore and he's texting me. I hope he's not driving and texting in Baltimore. I'll have somebody call the Maryland State Police. And
He's driving to, because he was going to fly out of Hartford. He had reservations to fly out of Hartford.
well, maybe
today.
he jumped. Maybe he's in the Baltimore airport and is listening to us.
Because I know he had reservations out of Hartford today.
He has little to do.
Apparently more than your sheriff.
I was literally sitting down to supper last night when he contacted me. But Steve was part of that conversation too. I appreciated the conversation. The timing was a little awkward.
We're trying to clear up whether Aluzi is texting and driving or is sitting in an airport. Okay, Steve, do you have some comments on this? Have you seen the language?
Thank you, Senator. Steve Howard, VSEA. I just barely read the language, and I can confirm Senator Aluzi is in an airport. I can't tell you which one, but he's in one of them. I did read the language very quickly. I do think, just listening to what Eric, the conversation between Eric and Annie, I do think it would be our preference that in this amendment that it's explicit that the transport deputies are classified state employees. I think that would be helpful. It's not clear that who knows what will happen with that other proposal. But we do think if this amendment is considered, that it should just be made clear that they're classified state employees and would have the same collective bargaining rights that any law enforcement officer who works for the state would have.
But does that, I don't want to step on Senator White's toes. She
No.
has the bill.
We have the bill and we're going to take it up after town meeting, but I have no idea what'll happen with it.
But does that supersede the bill?
I don't think so.
Oh, okay.
But if you put their classified, I don't know. I think Annie, if I understood Annie's assessment, it seemed right to me, but I don't know because I don't know how they fit together.
All right. Well, I don't want to screw up this effort
Right.
when there's a bill already in the hopper. I mean,
Well,
if the bill passes, then it would be automatic, wouldn't it?
well, are we saying that the problem here is that we need to put classified in here so that it's clear that the deputies, the transport deputies or the state paid deputies are classified employees, but if we don't pass that, then there are no classified transport deputies. So it seems to me at this point to leave it out. And then if the bill passes in our committee, then we can, this is going to go into the budget anyway, then we can just make that
Yeah,
simple change in the budget.
I would agree because the budget's always the last bill.
Right.
Right. So, or traditionally the budget's the last bill. I can remember years when the capital bill was the last bill.
That's what I would suggest, and I think that's what Annie suggested.
Yeah, I think that's better. Because that's like stepping on your committee's toes to already make them classified before your committee's passed the bill.
And then if it doesn't pass and we put classified in here, then there's nobody to address because there's no classified employees.
Right.
Yeah.
All right. Is there anything else on this issue? Is everybody, Justice Eaton, are you happy with this recommendation? I shouldn't say
Yes.
happy. Are you okay with it?
I think this is, as you've noted, this is not a solution to the full problem. It's a solution or a potential solution to a part of the problem and a part that's critical. So yes.
Thank you.
Senator Sears, I just wanted to, 2 weeks ago when you met, you asked me to try and find out the portion of the sheriff's budgets that are in county budgets. So I've had 8 responses. I've sent it to Peggy. It's posted on your website on those 8 responses. It varies what they're covering, mostly, building and some, administrative costs and supplies are very similar. Insurances, some do cover, it looks like some administrative costs for maybe a deputy. It just varies. Some cover it like an automobile lease, but mostly, technology, connectivity, janitorial. There's just a wide range of what you see built into those sheriff's budgets that are billed in the county budget to the towns.
I'll look at it. Thank you for getting that information. That's helpful.
And I'll keep updating it as I get more from the remaining 6 counties. So.
Yeah, I don't know what it's a very confusing system we've put together here. Not I don't think I had much to do with it over the years, but when I say we, I think it was done mostly before my time in the legislature. But it is at best confusing. Maybe we can put in a requirement that the sheriff be a resident of Vermont.
I'm not so sure that he isn't required to be a resident when he runs, or she.
Anyhow, I'm just going by a Digger story.
Only seems to be a problem in your neck of the woods.
Mhm.
Yeah, but I think in some counties, the state's attorney isn't a resident of the county.
That's true. A la one Vince Luzzi.
It
Yeah.
it is true. It is true. You don't have to be.
No, you don't have to be a law enforcement officer to be a sheriff. You don't have to be a lawyer to be a state's attorney either. Well, I think we're running. Are we pretty well finished with this issue for now? And Eric, the language would be in the budget, correct?
Yeah, it's like, I'll send you, I'm just doing a couple of little tweaks based on you wanted the effective date, on passage, just doing a couple and getting rid of that date. But so I'm just going to revise it and I'll send it back to you and Stephanie.
Okay. And Annie, you're going to get us information to go along with Sheriff Anderson's request.
I will, Senator.
And then we will figure out how to get them into either the fee bill or whatever bill we have lying around.
And I'll work with Stephanie to try to give some projections on costs. I think that would be helpful. So I'll talk to Steph after this.
Okay. Any other comments from anyone who's in the room? All right. Good. Are we scheduled for a break, Peggy?
Yes, we are until
Okay.
10:15. Right
All
now.
right. Well, why don't we? I think it's 10:05. So why don't we take 10 minutes?